everybody. Welcome to a brand new show sponsored by Martial Arts Lifestyle Magazine. I am Tim Becherer, the editor-in-chief of Martial Arts Lifestyle Magazine, and we are affectionately going to call this show Talking Heads. And we're going to cover topics and fun stuff. I don't know, on a regular basis. We'll see. We'll see how often I can get this panel together. And I'd like to introduce my illustrious panel of gentlemen who you may know as my interrogators. If you listen to the Martial Arts Lifestyle podcast, they were the interrogators of me, season 2, episode 1. First off, we've got Kurt Cornwell, who is the head instructor of MKG Detroit and the founder of Boombox Martial Arts, which had a great opening recently. Funky looking place with all kinds of good stuff going on. So we say welcome to Kurt. We also have from you're in South Carolina though, right?
Yes.
Where you're Mike Yuskiw? Okay, so we got Michael Yuskiw, who's a Jeet-Kune-Do instructor under the infamous Michael Krivka from Maryland, and he is the head instructor at Premier Martial Arts in Georgia, Augusta.
That's right, the Augusta, Georgia location. Yes, sir.
All right. So this guy likes to go over state lines for what reason we don't know, right? And we have Michael Perez. And he is the head instructor at DNA Martial Arts, as Kurt said so affectionately, that probably is do not apply. I don't know. Anyway, welcome, gentlemen. As usual, I love seeing you guys, and I think we're going to have a good time here.
Likewise.
All right.
Great to see you. Thanks for having us. Great to see everybody. How you doing, guys?
Okay, I'm going to toss it off to Kurt. I'm going to let Kurt get us into our topic.
All right, so, as a kickoff topic, maybe it's because of this particular group or just a logical place to start this sort of thing. We thought we'd get together today and examine some of the, I'm just going to call it what it is, more annoying cliches that we see in the martial art corners of social media. It's not a behavior pattern that's exclusive to martial artists. Though I do think a lot of us as martial artists hold ourselves or endeavor to hold each other up to a certain standard, a higher standard. And so to see behavior patterns that can be associated maybe with bullying or just generally being a little bit of a kind of, a toxic kind of personality can be frustrating, can be disappointing, yet it is extremely commonplace even in our neck of the woods here online. So we thought it would be an interesting topic to put together a list of some of the most common cliches that we seem to see and maybe break those down, break them apart, and hopefully provide some entertaining insights along the way.
All right. Where we start, Yuskiw?
So before we get into the segment, I'd like to just take a moment and speak directly to some of our listeners out there. So I'm going to just turn to the camera here. Hello, how are you? At MELMAG, we care about you. We have your best interest in mind. If you feel in any way triggered by this next segment, don't worry. We're probably not talking about you. From all of us at MELMAG, thank you. Be water, my friends. Walk on. All right, and now I'd like to start. Number 1, let's get right into it. I'll kick it right over to Mike Perez for number 1. Go ahead.
God, I would have to say the keyboard warriors that really don't do enough research and just seem to want to come out and say they know everything about anything, and regardless of their little education. I don't know. I mean, we could go on and on and on about that.
The keyboard warriors.
Yes, I mean, we come into contact with every day.
That there's subsets under too.
Yes.
Our keyboard warrior, we talking about the tough guy?
Sure. Yeah, we can go with that.
That's definitely one type, right? The
Right.
guy who says, I'll fight anybody, but he's never going anywhere to fight anybody.
Right.
That's definitely one type, right?
Well, how ridiculous is it to challenge people to fights on the internet anyway?
Exactly. And from other parts of the world.
Well,
Like, where are you? Where are you? You're in
I mean,
India somewhere? Oh yeah, I'm over here in South America. I'll fight you. Like, that's never
Right.
gonna happen, right? So it's easy to say that.
Well, you remember the real fun one where we had one of our favorite guys in South Africa kept getting into it with some dude in Germany, and there was this constant I'm gonna fly to Germany. Well, okay, well, I'll be here. And it's just like, are you guys out of your fucking mind? Like,
And we don't hear from those guys anymore. I hope they're okay. I don't know. They disappeared. I hope everything's okay.
Yeah, they kind of just fell off the map there after a while. I mean,
Right.
nobody's really heard anything of them.
Right, exactly. Someone should do a wellness check, I think.
Is anybody volunteering for that?
Right.
I mean, well, I think Michael, you even kind of had that happen. Some dude sort of dropped the challenge. Now I don't want to name names because we're actually supposed to, I think he's here locally to me, and I think we're supposed to actually get together and hopefully train with him at some point.
Right.
So, I mean, two things over, but it's interesting how that is something like that is something that comes flying out of our adult mouths, but through our fingers. Then on a type, you'd think you'd have some more time to think about that as you're typing it, right? And
I think a lot of it has to do with
idea.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with people just reacting on emotion. They don't take time to think about what they say before they say it, and they just get so emotionally invested and just react right away that if they would have just take time to step back, breathe, and think about the situation before they do anything, they might not react the same way. I'm guilty of that, I'll say. I mean, there's been a couple of times I've jumped online and
come on, man. I spent my time on Friday trying to tell people how much of a, like Dwight, how much of a nice guy you are in reality, that you're not actually.
Yeah. I mean, there's reasons for it, but I'm getting better at controlling the emotion aspect of it. But yeah, you see a lot of that where it's the people that are the uneducated that tend to jump in on these conversations and react on emotion without any education in the topic that they're speaking on.
Yeah.
Some
A lot
of it
of that comes
seems like.
down to.
Go ahead, Kurt.
Sorry, I feel like a lot of that then comes down to their perception of themselves and what it is they perceive as education, right? And sometimes that can be interesting. A lot of these things that are extremely obnoxious or frustrating or whatever also give us an opportunity to kind of learn a little bit about people, which, given what it is we all do, I think is important. So there are some learning opportunities there. And I'm often wondering that, like, is this the kind of person, if they're, for want of a better term, picking fights on the internet, is this somebody that would do that in a bar? Or is this the kind of person that definitely would not do that in a bar? Like, are they only courageous because they're in a screen? Or is this just an echo of their personality? They're a bit unsavory to be around, period. Imagine being in a relationship with somebody like that or whatever, is that really part of their identity? And if it is, and if they're getting so, they're not going to like this word, but so triggered by something they're reading on the internet, maybe it's because they see a technique that they don't think would work in real life, or an art that they think is BS, or whatever it is, or they don't like your take on Bruce Lee. It's surprising that brings them to such an agitated and emotional state, that they have to completely like purge everything into the internet. And so, to your point, Mike Perez, of them not being educated, what's interesting, I think, is a lot of those people do see themselves, and I think that's your point, do see themselves as very insightful, very educated, as an authority on that, right? And it maybe in their home, they are an authority on that, or in their neighborhood or their community, the town they live in, they're an authority on that. But at large, a lot of times they're much further down the pecking order than they realize, right? And it's that kind of thing where you don't always know how little you know, or you don't know what you don't know. And that tends to be the thing that frustrates me the most. I don't have a problem with you if you think you know everything, and you really don't. I mean, all of us were teenagers at one point, right? So that's a thing that's a personality type we see over and over again, but not having the humility to pause for a beat and go, maybe this person I'm speaking to does have access to information I don't have. Maybe they have been around the block a few times, and I can't just say, well, these are the facts and you're wrong, and that's what's up. And if you don't like it, then let's settle this like men. Like, I don't even understand the nature of that conversation. First of all, we're in a chat room. This may as well be America Online in 1997. And second of all, we're both demonstrating that we are passionate about the same thing. So there could be something interesting that comes from that. But instead, everybody is trying to just figure out whose is bigger, for one of a less crass way to say it. You know what I mean? It's just kind of a pissing contest. And so it's weird, and it's easy to get sucked into that. I've been guilty of it too, and it's totally not my personality otherwise. I mean, I have a temper that I have a decent handle on now at this stage in my life. But man, there's times where people just push those buttons, and it's hard to stop and go, you know what? One, this person might be having a shit day, or they've got their own stuff going on, and to try to have a little bit of patience and compassion for that. And two, there's no sense in arguing with teenagers, especially when you're already grown,
Right. And whether that teenager is in an adult shell or not, because I figure if they're on Facebook, they're up people, because I don't think a lot of teenagers actually spend time on Facebook.
No, I mean that figuratively. You can be
yeah.
a teenager and be 90 years old. I've got two 7-year-old daughters and a 3-year-old son, and they're all teenagers. So
Right.
Yeah, you guys are bringing up great points. I think imagine if there was like a massive field, like bigger than a football field, and people had martial arts classes on the field. And when you're training, like I have a group of 15, and I'm looking over at this other group of 10, and students are looking over at other people's classes. We don't teach like that. Instructors don't teach with other instructors. So some of these instructors, I think, when they actually get online, they're not used to having to actually discuss a lot of the techniques, the philosophy, the way they do it with other instructors. They're used to having students that basically just accept what they say. Now, maybe they have good descriptions, maybe they don't. But I think sometimes when we get into the comment section with these guys, they have a couple comments that they drop. Maybe in some cases, they don't have any other way to describe it. Once they've run out of their words, they're like, okay, we got to settle this with our fists, because I can prove that I'm right. But the only way I can prove it is by actually doing it, because I can't use words anymore. Like at some point, they are almost waving the white flag that I can't use language. I have to use martial arts because I'm at the end of my rope with language. I can't describe it any other way. They're not saying
that's
that.
an interesting way to
that's
think
what
of
you
it.
were kind of getting to, I think, actually.
Yeah, it's like these sort of like they're letting off truth bombs, or there's this mic drop moment that they're used to having, right?
Yep.
They say the thing and their students are like, oh snap, I've never heard that before. They're right, and then they're saying it to you, and you're like, yeah, I mean, I remember I heard that point 25 years ago, and at this point I just don't agree with it, and they kind of don't quite know what to do,
Right.
And, I feel a lot of times there's this sense of martial artists, online or in person, there's almost an entitlement to like, you owe me an explanation, or you have to prove or really qualify and convince me of what it is you have to say and that you think.
Right. And then the flip side, owe me an audience, right? Which no one owes anybody any of that.
Anything. Yes, 100%. Right. The only thing you owe is some loyalty to your students, that you do the best for them, and then let everybody else, like you said, might walk on,
But Kurt, you were also bringing up a great point about not knowing other people's positions. And actually, this is getting a little bit ahead, dealing with we're going to get into strategies to deal. We're already kind of dealing with some strategies in a way to deal with some of these people. But asking questions is one of the things. Instead of just coming with my own side, I just keep asking questions. Well, describe what you're talking about. You had this point you made, just describe it more. And in some ways, you can figure where they're coming from. In other ways, you can just give them more rope and they hang themselves with it. Like you let them talk and then, right, just keep going. Like certain people that think they're going to dispel some myth. Well, continue dispelling the myth. Please continue, right? Far be it for me to stop you. Go ahead and continue. And everybody can just see whether these ideas are good or not, right? I don't have to push back. We can see. You just drag them into the light of day. There it is.
Maybe, unless you run into one of our other character types, which is, I don't answer the question guy.
Yeah, so can you elaborate on that? Because I feel like there's a few versions of that. And recently, one or two of them have managed to just ferret their way under my skin.
The master deflector.
Yeah, the old well, I don't answer the question guy could be the guy who just literally like one guy we just watched that I teased you about, who literally just has a rubber stamp answer to everything and then answers the same goddamn thing to everybody. And you're like, okay, now I've read this 25 times in the same thread, man. You just once would have been great. I don't need to see the same answer to every person, which still isn't even answering the question. You got that guy. Then you got my Perez's favorite guy.
Master deflector.
Yes.
Yes.
Deflection foo.
Yes. It's still avoiding the question, or avoiding answering it. They just come up with something else or go on to a different topic. So they continually answer it with another question. They create more. So, but negating to answer the original.
Yeah, well, and I think, that's exactly, Mike Yuskiw, what you're talking about is just this idea of like, once if somebody's insistent on their point and they're not even that they're being asked to back it up, they just aren't offering anything of substance and they're just kind of lambasting the group with whatever it is they have to say. They're just sort of preaching or putting everybody on blast or saying, well, that's a fact and you just have to accept it without any real the term that I always keep in mind now that I always hear from Dwight is that intellectual honesty about it. You know what I mean? There's no real intellectual honesty here. And when somebody is not even trying to challenge you, but just trying to ask you to elaborate and explain further, and you can't, I feel like that was your point, Mike, was that they've never really been put in that position before. They're used to being what I say is gospel. I'm the guy that knows what's up. And everyone else is just my student or a hanger on. And so, and then if that's their entire identity, right, that's how they see themselves, then they're going to be defensive. By nature, they're going to be defensive when they feel like you're challenging who they are by virtue of just asking a question. How did you come to that conclusion? Oh, because it's a fact. And how, and I'm the one who would know, they just start to kind of strip out a little bit because their whole self is wrapped up in those beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah. And often I can almost frame a question like, okay, well, just for argument's sake, pretend that I'm not smart at all. Maybe I'm not smart. Why don't you explain it to me in simple terms so that I can understand it, right? And then that may expose some flaw in their own thinking. And maybe once I don't know that I want to do that because now we have to be real with each other. And maybe you're on the other team. Maybe I don't want to expose some weakness because you're on another team. This is going to get used against me later on, right? Because people kind of know, like if I have a conversation with certain people I've had conversation with in the past, even if I come to it honestly, they may think, well, you had a gotcha question last time, so I don't know that I'm going to have a conversation with you now because you might trick me into some corner or whatever. So you can't always have and I try to clear the air. Hey, let's just have a regular conversation. And that's sometimes difficult to do.
Yeah, that's a good point. That the idea that you maybe had a gotcha question before or something else you said before, I think a lot of people in these conversations, these debates, these interactions go in with guns out already because, like are inherently going to be defensive, figuring, what's the trick? You're setting the reason you're asking me this is because you've got something in your back pocket that you're going to let out. Like every single interaction on the internet has to be chess, not checkers, as opposed to just having a conversation.
We have experienced that person. So I think that's a somewhat reasonable fear, but
Yes,
I think
absolutely. And it's a good thing for all of us to be self-aware of too, of like, hey,
right.
It's easy. Like, hey, 2 weeks ago I was dogging somebody and now today I'm going, I'm just being neutral. Like, fine. But a lot of times you're that guy.
I think that's a character flaw that we all have though, that as we grow up, we tend to
I'm perfect.
Right. That, we don't want to be challenged, because some of us, as we get older, we tend to have a more open mind to where we accept views from other people. Whereas when we're younger, it's like, what we see, that's what we're attuned to. That's what we don't want to look outside that because then it challenges us to think maybe we might be wrong. Maybe there is a better way to do things. So I think that's just an inherent character flaw of us all that as we get older, some of us tend to outgrow it where others kind of just cling to it. They can't seem to let it go. And you see that in some of these chat groups with the way they react to some of the things that are being told to them. That's it. No, this is fact. Well, just because you say it's fact doesn't mean it is unless you can give me proof on it. But, maybe if you look at it from this view, you might be able to see it a little differently.
Right. That makes me think of yet another character we have, which is the Kurt, you had brought this up, the ultimate top of the triangle pinnacle, ultimate coach guy, or the bearer of the secret information that no one else has. Therefore, it's a fact because I say it's a fact, because I'm the ultimate coach. I'm going to tell you what you did wrong, what you don't know, but I won't tell you actually what you don't know because only I know, and I'm not going to tell you either, but I'll just tell you that you're wrong.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If we're all the tip of the triangle, then what we have is a square. You know what I mean? Like, that's not how that works, Yeah. And And that's not to say that there aren't people out there who do have the decades of experience and wisdom and insight and experiences, not just like a literary education. I can read all of Bruce Lee's books over and over again, but Bruce Lee, that does not make me, you know what I mean? And that doesn't give me any wisdom. That gives me the ability to echo or parrot something insightful that he may have said, or that he may have gotten from somebody else, for that matter. So now I'm trying to share some philosophical perspective that's 3 times removed, and it's not really mine. And that frustrates me about people in general, because I love to learn from people. I do try to be very actively open-minded. I'm very passionate about being proven wrong. I love to be wrong, because that means I get to learn something today. So I'm always here for that. But I'm so turned off by or just bored with or loath to be around people who are like, oh, good that that's the case, because you're going to learn today. I've got something to teach everybody because I'm the guy that knows everything, And a lot of times these are associated with personality things that are pet peeves of mine. They might be, sharing long quotes from themselves, right? That's just a pet peeve of mine. People are always quoting themselves, or, and sharing like really cool pictures of themselves, super serious, and I think I probably had done a thing or two in that vein when I was maybe 21 years old or whatever. But to be 40, 50, 60 and doing that, again, a lot of that is just personal pet peeve. But there seems to be often a trend of people who really love their own Musk, right? And who are very proud of not only their own opinions, but have, whether they've insulated themselves or something, really think that they have all the information. They're the people that know, and no one else has the experience that they have, and don't even really bother to go, well, I don't know who this person is I'm talking to. I don't know them at all. They might actually have been there, done that kind of guy. And I know in my experience, a lot of the genuinely been there, done that people I've been around, the baddest dudes that I've been around, some of whom are quite legendary in their own right. You're not going to know that about them unless there's a reason you know that about them, because that's what genuinely experienced or dangerous people are like. You know what I mean? They don't go around telling you their biography all the time because they don't need to. They don't want to. There's things about it they'd rather not discuss. That's why you don't go up and ask a veteran certain questions about things they've experienced. There's things about people that they that's just not your business, and they don't share it. And so whenever somebody's so quick to give their resume, or insist upon that, I get a little bit like, I don't know if I believe you now.
Right. Yeah. Like think of it, any Navy SEALs, is generally not because they told you they were one.
100%.
Somebody else told you, or, maybe who they are through our circles, I think of Pat Trey, for instance. I've talked to him several times. At no point did he ever say, I'm Pat Trey, the Navy SEAL. I know he is because Guru Dan has told me, and there's photos of him, in the fatigues and that sort of thing. But
and those are usually not the guys posting pictures of themselves wearing camouflage outfits with a knife between their teeth, quoting themselves out of context or whatever. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to be too specific in that example, but there's versions of that over and over again every day. It's like a meme, someone turning themselves into a meme.
Now, do you think the guy quoting himself on social media is akin to the guy who talks about himself in third person in live?
It's kind of a new version of that. Yeah.
That's accurate.
I mean, that's weird. Can you imagine Abraham Lincoln quoting himself? That'd be hilarious.
That was just like I said, that's a stupid thing. It's a pet peeve, but it's like if
hilarious. It's just
it's if I have something that I think is insightful or that's important to share, then you say it, right?
Yeah.
You don't put quotes around it and then a little dash next to it, because now all you're communicating is that you're proud of your point. You're not actually communicating your point. You know what I mean? Like the priority now is in giving yourself credit, not in the message. And you would never do that. If you and I are talking and I said something and I'm like, damn, that was actually pretty smart. I'm surprised I said that. So said Kurt Cornwell. You know what I mean? You'd be like, what? That's crazy.
Well, unless you're Jack Burton, it doesn't really matter, because you know what Jack Burton would say at a time like this.
What
so this is
say?
So I think what you're bringing up, Kurt, is definitely like if you think about when you start the martial arts and you think about what kind of martial artist do I want to be, right? I wanted to be like a ninja. I wanted to have like crazy technique. You know what I mean? I wanted to be able to do the stuff in Street Fighter, like the spinning kick and the Hadouken. Like if I could do a Hadouken, I would do it. If I could train to be able to do a Hadouken, I would do that. I would do that. But I didn't look at the classes and the instructor and think, I want everybody to love me. I want to be up in front of these classes. I want people to think that I'm them. I wanted to be able to do the damn fireball. I wanted to have like the great kick. I didn't think all I have to do is get to a certain point and then people will follow me. They will like me. They will lift me up as if I'm this instructor. I think sometimes the work can stop for some people physically because they're like, you know what, this is enough. Now I'm revered. Now I've got this instructor thing going. This actually fulfills me in certain ways more than the actual training did. So let me just keep this going. And people can live that out in social media in a way that you can't in real life, right? You can create, just like you were saying about, you can curate your life on social media like someone, like a curator of a museum. I can show you a life that's not real. And I think in some ways, people's ego, their life may not be fulfilling in some aspect. And they fill those gaps in with that persona online.
I couldn't agree more. That should be the soundbite for the episode. I think it's one of the most important things for all of us to keep in mind. I think it's where trying to have compassion for people, even when they're driving you up a wall, comes into play, because I think a lot of us, and there might be elements of myself that are in this category. I think a lot of us come to this practice to fill a void. You know what I mean? A lot of us put the sensei or the sifu or the professor in like a paternal category. Maybe you had issues with your dad, or or you didn't have positive male role models, or you didn't have a sort of like sense of camaraderie in that way. I know I had an experience when I first moved to Minneapolis to train with Rick Fay. It was the first time I got invited out to dinner after class with a group of the guys from the gym. We're eating pizza and everyone is referencing different scenes from like Kickboxer and Only the Strong. And I sat there, I was like, I don't know, 23 or something. I sat there and I thought, my God, I found my people. Everybody here has the same references and stuff that I do. Like where I was growing up, nobody was watching all the nerdy movies I was watching and interested, and it was extremely, like, I'll never forget that. It was an incredible moment. And so, and I, to this day, I still love this practice because of the people I get to be around. So it's awesome. But I think that, yeah, if you've got a void or you haven't been able to get a handle on your ego and you didn't benefit from having a teacher who helped to kind of grind that out of you and help you put your feet on the ground, that kind of thing, it can be really tough. And now all of a sudden, if your ego is puffed up and you've got a little bit of notoriety, or more to the point that I've been making for this particular example, you're starting to, maybe your time has come and gone. Maybe you thought you were going to hit a point where you were going to break through and be some kind of somebody in the martial art world. I'm going to be in the magazines and in the thing and the this, that, the other thing, and now 15 years has gone by. You physically can't do what you used to do. So you have to not only rest on your laurels, but kind of recycle the old stuff that you used to post or say.
The
or
greatest hits come back.
Yeah. So in hopes that people will be like, oh, that guy that I didn't really know anything about, turns out he's a somebody. And that's a tragedy because everybody's a somebody. You know what I mean? We all know that. We all agree with that. It's just when somebody's hitting you in the face with it, it's a bit much,
Right. Well, it's interesting. You bring up the void and the parental thing, because I mean, if you think about it, and this is something that Guru Dan's been quizzing the kids class on a little bit, and I do the same thing on Saturday. Is what do these terms mean? What does sifu mean? What does sigong mean? And so sifu means your teacher, but it also means your father. So they're using these sort of family type metaphors for the words and the titles. And like even guru has a spiritual connotation to it, when the Filipino definition sort of is a person who takes you from darkness into light. So yes, we have these sort of leadership positions, and there's an affection for them, which I think is exactly why we get very angry and we get very willing to defend enough to take offense when someone is attacking the people that are in those roles to us. And why I think, I think, at least I know the four of us and many of us that run our circles are very careful about how we approach that with other people's teachers, the ones that are attacking us in particular or attacking our teacher, because I think it's just an unfair shot. I think it's an out of bounds shot. So I don't want to pull that off. And I think you guys are the same way. So, we find very annoying to offensive that someone does that to our teachers, friends, the same way, because we do look at it as a family. And then you push a little farther and you've got this cult-like reverence with some people. And it's kind of like what you're talking about, Mike, too, is just this. Yeah, some people are kind of pushing that boundary because that's what they want. There's some weird desire for them to have these minions and followers and stuff. And so, there's a lot of gray area in there that gets really interesting.
Yeah, I feel like people seek out those titles, which is such an important point that you're making, like something like Sifu, because there's a status to it, right? There's a hierarchical aspect to that, and they get to be at the tip of the pyramid, the tip of the triangle, to your initial point, as opposed to understanding, not to be like too on the nose about it, like what you want to be is the man, right? But what that word means is the father, and you can be a man and be a real shit daddy, you know what I mean? Like that's you're kind of missing the thing here, I know I always benefit having a teacher like Rick Fay, who would always joke is like, he didn't always like that term. He's like, I don't want to be your daddy, because Sifu is a relationship, and it means that person has to vouch for you, and they have to, it's a two-way street. It's not just an honorary title. There's a lot of dynamics in place there. And I think a lot of people just aspire to be able to hang that title on their mantle, or make it part of their Facebook name for that matter, and have it be this sort of projection of themselves, as opposed to how deep and meaningful it is. And it's not to say that those people don't also have deep feelings about it. It just certainly, when it doesn't come across that way, it begs the question, right? It leaves you wondering, like, what is your motivation here, man? Is it, do you really want to raise these students as if they're your family? Or is it, Charles Manson started a family too, man.
Right. Well, if I say the word Sifu, what comes to mind for you guys?
For me, it's great because I have the benefit of studying Chinese for a long time. So immediately, and I was already thinking this before you asked that, Lao Shi is the word for teacher in Mandarin, and that Shi is the same as the C in Sifu is Cantonese. So the Mandarin would be Shifu. That Shi is the same one as Lao Shi. So if you're just talking about your teacher, like if in academia, you'd use Lao Shi, you don't use Shifu. But the Shi is the same one as Sifu, the C. And the Fu is like we can say your mom and your dad, and we say Fumu. That's the Sifu and the Simu. They're just putting Fumu together, right? So Mu is the mom and Fu is the dad. So when you have Sifu, it's like your teacher father, and Simu is your teacher mother, right? So where teacher is kind of like the old guide, because Lao is old, like Lao Tzu, that just meant old master.
Oh, wow.
So you just take the old off, and you just put the teacher mom and the teacher dad. That's Sifu and Simu. So yeah. So I definitely have gone down those language rabbit holes, writing the characters and looking stuff up, and let me look it up in the dictionary again. So yeah, definitely some depth there as far as my love of the language and where we go with all that stuff.
That's super interesting. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, Perez, what do you think when the word Sifu? What comes to mind?
Prominent figure of authority in martial arts. I always think of the old-fashioned kung fu flicks with the gentleman with the long white beard and the long mustache, and somebody of authority in martial arts. But now it's a father figure, or just any type of scholarly figure in martial arts, I guess. It's
all right, Kurt.
I'm not gonna constantly reference Rick Fay. It's just he happens to be a good example for being a very grounded person in the martial arts. And I'm always grateful to be around somebody like that. He's going to be here in like 5 days. So it's just on my mind, but
Yes.
that he is the person, he is what I think of. And it is the honest answer to that question, because I've had this conversation with him so many times, and he talks about all the time with his instructors and stuff, is like, you know, that again, that word is a relationship. There's sort of a sacred pact to that. There, at least there can be in some groups, in some circles. It's not just a title. It's a relationship, and it's he never liked that title. And the genuinely first thing, like a Rorschach test, the first thing that comes to mind every time is what he would always say is, if you call me Sifu, it's because I'm the guy that cleans the mats after everyone goes home. Meaning, like, it's because I'm the school owner. Fine, I'll take that. I get it. I own the school, so technically I'm the Sifu. But that's not how I see myself. You know, I would rather be the guru. I'm somebody who's trying to create a space where you're able to find new truths and to guide you in that process. But that dynamic is really, really special. Because of that, and to give him a hard time, a lot of times I like to call him Sifu because I know it drives him nuts. So, but it's also because I am such a different person now, having known him, than I was before. And it is not the martial art training that got me to this point. You know, it's great to have that as a vehicle, as an outlet, as a personal practice, but it's all the other life lessons. It's learning different things about what it means to be an adult, maybe to be a man, maybe to be a father, all these really insightful and important, enlightening life conversations that I've had with him and with other people like him. And so I'm really, really picky with when I use that word, you know, and that's actually a thing I got from Chris Harley, right? So Harley will talk a lot about, like, you know, Gurudan is his Sifu, and I don't want to quote him, you know, but like Larry Hartzell was this, and Inosanto is this, and Rick Faye, the kind of attaches specific titles to specific people and gave himself permission to do it that way. And that's how I think of things. I have my Sifu, and then I have other people like David Hatch, right? Like Mike Perez is your teacher. You know, I met David Hatch in like 2003, you know, so it's been 20 years since I've known him. He's not my Sifu, but I see him as Sifu Dave. He's, you know, where other people that are teachers of mine, their coach or their guru or their whatever, because of the nature of that relationship, you know. And so I think sometimes, again, people using it as like a badge of honor, you earned it. That's awesome, you know, and I'm here for that. But I hope that there's some depth to that as well, because man, that's a real serious one to me. And I sure don't have anybody in my gym call me that. You know, it's fine if you do, but that's a lot to take on.
No, I get that, because my answer would be just like you. I think of specific people. You say Sifu to me, I think Larry Hartzell, and I think Francis Fong. And so when calls me Sifu, I'm looking around for one of these two guys. And it's one thing, you know, when the kids call me that in class. And then when an adult calls me it in class, that's fine, because again, like the Rick Faye thing, yes, I'm on the mats, I'm in a position, that's great. But when they call me that out in the parking lot, it's a little weird to me, because of the people I've put in that position in my life too. You know, like that Chris Harley, what the hell's that guy know? No, I know what you're talking about. I've had that same conversation with him, you know, so it's good stuff. And, you know, for me, there's even people, you know, it's a revered position to me. So it's like, I remember the first time I met Rick Young, I called him Sifu, and he says, no, just call me Rick. And I said, okay, Sifu, it'll take me a while to get to that. And in the meantime, I'll work on it. Sorry, Sifu. And I haven't got to it yet. I haven't got to where I really would feel comfortable calling him Rick, as close and friendly as I am with him. He's just a person I have this utmost respect for, because he's, you know, just a great martial artist, great teacher, and great person. So I just feel that need, you know, he's my senior. So I feel the need personally to refer to him as a title, just because of that.
Sure. Right. Well, I feel like I think we all probably agree more or less with this, but you know, the word sir sure goes a long way when it comes to this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Because it's like, you know, if I don't, I mean, Rick Young, what a great example. Though I've known who he is in depth for decades, I've not had the opportunity to actually meet him and hang out with him and learn from him. But so okay, so that's an example. He's not my Sifu, but I'm not gonna call him Rick. That's crazy, Like I don't know you. So like, thank God we have a word like sir that can be a placeholder. And it also kind of like, I feel like I've not had this happen, but if I imagine a scenario where I'm using that as a term of respect, and they're like, well, technically you should be calling me this. I feel like you're probably gonna wind up on my list of guys I'm not gonna go see again,
Right.
because
Yeah.
like that's a really weird hill to die on, right?
Yeah.
I have the title sensei now, which is very weird to me because I've never achieved sensei rank in any Japanese art, but because Premier uses sensei, because they're kind of roots in sport karate, right? So I had the same thing where people go, sensei, sensei, and I'm like, who's here? Who are they? Oh, they're talking about me. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, what? So they're calling me sensei, right? Sensei out, and I use Sensei Mike, but we have to use our last names because the idea is if you call your instructor by the first name, it's a little too informal. So they have the last names on the belts and stuff like that. So yeah, so I'm Sensei Yuskiw. So which is again, it's added another level because usually I was like I said, I was hey, just call me Mike, Then actually it puts some parents some off like what do I call you? Just call me Mike. And they're like, what? Because everybody's calling me Sensei, so it's pretty formal. But yeah, I feel the same way, about the titles. Like I'll definitely use them with other people, but I don't necessarily feel I need these sort of reverent titles too. But it's a job thing. The kids need the respect, so I
Right.
obviously call me Sensei Yuski. Don't call me Sensei Mike because I want to
Well,
go along with the thing.
it's these terms of endearment that we use out of respect, but then now we are in those positions and we don't tend to recognize ourselves as that. We see these people, like I said, out of recognition for their achievements, we say this out of respect to them. But just like us, we get older. Like Kurt said with the term sir, I'm almost 50 years old, and for someone to call me that, it's like I feel like it would be something used for someone a lot older than myself or a lot more achieved than I am. And I'm just Mike. It's like it reminds me of the phrase from Roadhouse where he says to the gentleman, he calls him sir, he's like, calling me sir is like putting an elevator in an outhouse. It doesn't fit. It's like that's how I feel. I have this relationship with my students, and yes, it's a term of recognition, but at the same time, I kind of feel kind of silly about it because it's just I'm just here as a friend imparting some wisdom if I can, or some education to help you along. But I understand that it's there out of respect, So I get it when we talk about these people that we hold in such high esteem that when they're just call me Rick, or just call me so and so. But I can't. I look at you as this, you're this guy. But I get it. They're friends with us, and they're just trying to be friendly and just take it out of that whole hierarchy context. But out of respect, it's kind of hard for us to not take it there.
We need to have it there. We do, right? Like
Yes,
my students need to have the respect and the discipline to respect all different adults. So I say, yeah, do it with me too. So I completely agree. It's kind of like, okay, I can, it's a little bit of an ego thing that I don't need, right? So
yeah.
I'd like to offer that this should be
shouldn't be taken advantage of, I think is kind of what we're all getting to, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
You're
Like Kurt
demanding.
said, if you're walking around and talking about like, this is what you should call me or whatever, you're boasting about yourself and using it in such a bragging way, then yeah, it's going to kind of put you on a douchebag list. But
well,
anybody that requires worship doesn't deserve it.
Yes.
Right. Well, and any of us within the context, the confines of the school or organization or whatever, yes, of course that's great. But I would never ask anyone on a Facebook forum to call me Sifu or Guru. It would be asinine. Even the people I don't like, well, that's actually I should say, yes, that's Mr. Guru so and so to you, just for the fucking fun of it. But but it would just be dumb. It'd be really like Kurt said, it's just kind of like, yeah, if you made that demand of me, you're probably falling off the list of anyone I ever want to.
Right. But I think that's a reflection of the people that we've been in contact with too in this martial art community. With the way we are with that is the same way that the people that we look up to are.
So I think for the sake of this episode, one, the topic of like teacher terms or terms of endearment or authority or whatever should be a whole other episode.
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
a third of this one already, but
Yeah.
especially like, you know, Mike, when you were breaking down the language, you know, the linguistics of it and all that, like there's a lot of interesting things to unpack. I'd be curious if anyone listening has suggestions or feedback on that, or if there's different titles that we're not as familiar with. Maybe we could bring in somebody that could help unpack what their
What?
terms are. I think
Hello.
yeah, you know, I think it's an interesting subject for sure. I also think I'll make this more about me, but it is funny, you know, because a lot of what we're talking about is like annoying martial art stuff or martial art or people in the martial art, that kind of thing. And here we've got our teachers or people going like, it almost makes me uncomfortable. Just call me by my name. And we're going, oh, I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm going to call you this. So somewhere out there's a conversation where we're the example of the annoying thing because we can't do that, right? Despite our best intentions.
Hey, you're the only one that said we're perfect in this group.
Yeah, so somewhere out there, we're the example.
Flip side of that coin.
Yeah. So to that end, and for the sake of time and you know all the different sort of examples that we have, do we have any other examples of things, whether it's you personally or things we've discussed or observed online, that really get under your skin? You know, there's the sort of the biggest cliche of all is the like that wouldn't work or that art sucks guy, you know.
That wouldn't work,
And
guy.
yeah, and I know that's been talked about a lot, but yeah, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't at least mention it. You know, what is your take, Tim? You know, let's say you get because this is common and I'm not picking on them, but let's say you get a BJJ guy and he's looking at a JKD video or something or whatever, and a karate video, doesn't matter, and is just completely trashing it. You know, this is a practice that could be 70 to 370 years old, and maybe he's been in BJJ for a year and he knows what's up. You know, how do you feel about that? Is there some validity to his perspective by virtue of him being in a practical art? Is it all ego? What do you think?
I think that's a great question, and I think everyone has their own experience, and what I think we're decent at is understanding that there is a world beyond our own experience, and that is the key. I think is to not tell a person that their experience is invalid, but that it's not the whole picture. And I think of, for instance, at the academy, two examples of gentlemen. There's Larry Hartzell, who you guys all know, and I think everyone, if I say Larry Hartzell, people are like, oh yeah, okay. There was another guy by the name of Mike Wise that was there for a long time, very senior guy. And Larry and Mike were the two people that when they showed you something, there was just a spice on it that you're like, you did this for real. You've actually made this thing work. And they would tell you, not this way, because they're literally telling you, yeah, their head will slip out. This has happened to me. You know, it's like you can hear the words between the lines. So there was a way and an attitude those guys had, and it wasn't braggadocious. It was just kind of matter of fact. And you know, those lessons were easy to hold on to because they felt very genuine. And all I can say now, you know, we have the benefit of that YouTube thing that this is on, and just type in like real fight. There are so much, because of security cameras and the phones in our hands, you can watch 10 million real confrontations out there, and you're not going to find any of them that are the same. These are all different scenarios. Like, how the hell are you going to really say this won't work? Well, it might not work here. It might not work here. But to say it doesn't work, you're like, no one ever beat anybody with karate ever in the history of anything. Well, karate would be gone if that were the case. So I think, you know, it's just very short-sighted for anybody, no matter how practical the martial art seems, to say, well, that won't work. Yeah, I think we have some extremes that we could say, yes, that probably double somersault thing, whatever, probably most likely won't work. But I'm not concerning myself with that. I don't really care. You know, I'm not the Bushido, bullshito, whatever police out there. that doesn't matter to me. It just does get a little annoying when you're you're working with something that, you know, you've pulled off in some sparring or whatever. I'm not looking to go to the bar to find out whether my shit works. I really not. I'm not going to do the crazy Eddie that Guru talks about, the Silat teacher that used to put the $20 bills in his pocket and ride the subways in New York and pretend like he was asleep so someone kind of try to rob him and he could fight. That just sounds insane to me. And that's just not my personality. I'm really not looking to, you know, I'm 6'4". I'm a pretty big guy. I'm pretty sure I'll go to jail, you know, if I get into fights. And, you know, I'm not the guy who can play innocent too well in that regard. So that's just not something I'm looking to do. So, you know, I test it in the way I can. But in the end, you know, it's just like, I'm just not getting into these fights. So that kind of thing just doesn't concern me. But, you know, so yeah, I think the larger picture is kind of going back to what I said. It's just like, you know, everyone has a point of view. It's usually from their experience, and their experience might just be their own ego, but there's a larger picture out there. And I don't know the best way to reflect to someone that, okay, you know, you have a valid experience, but it's really not everything. So, okay.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this, because my take on this comes down to, what if your martial art training for you as an individual really doesn't have shit to do with fighting, right? What if that's just not why you're doing that class? You know, so the double somersault flying fiery back kick example that you're giving, you know, is that gonna be the appropriate tool at 4 a.m. when someone broke into your house, or at 2 a.m. when you're leaving the bar? Probably not. But is perhaps that person loves it and is enjoying it and lost 100 pounds in learning to do it and had a sense of accomplishment, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so to shit on that person and put them down or belittle them for something that might be really meaningful to them in a way, I that really really bothers me. That's the one where I'm like, now I kind of do want to fight you, dude, because I saw you
Yes.
bully this other guy where you don't
Yes.
know what that accomplishment meant to him. You know, it may have taken him a really long time, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears just to be able to do that thing in the gym or in the dojo. And I think the short-sightedness, which is a good word, a lot of it comes down to thinking, you know, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? Thinking martial art is just about that. You know, because this brings in the other thing, like least favorite version of this in my world, which is if you do that in real life, you're going to get killed, or that teacher is going to get somebody killed. You're like, could you take yourself any more seriously with your Brazilian ground karate or your Filipino stick karate? Like, come on, you guys, this is, what world are you living in? You know, if you are teaching a student who you know needs to use this on their way home to defend themselves, or who is employed in a capacity where they might have to restrain or do something violent to another person, or if you're marketing your service as, you know, you're going to have to register your hands as deadly weapons here, man, because shit's about to get real, you know, then you better be authentic in what it is that you're doing, right? You know, if that is what you're selling and that is what you're offering, then that better be legit. But if it's not that, then I think it's free to be anything that it is, again, so long as you're authentic about what it in fact is. And so I'm always kind of surprised, and I usually take it as a lack of experience when I see somebody then call into question how that would never work. Because I've had guys, I think I've told you before, I had a guy tell me a YouTube video of mine that I couldn't last 3 minutes in the cage with his idol, Conor McGregor. And I was like, yo, you think I could last 2.5 minutes with Conor McGregor? That's awesome. You know, I was like, shit, man, that's cool. You know, like that's a real compliment, man. You know,
That's a great way to look at it. I like that.
Yeah, like it's just kind of, I don't know what you think I'm doing, but the median age in this class and the video you're commenting on is about 52 years old. And if you'll notice, everyone is smiling. You know, like that's just not what we're doing here. You know, I don't, and
Right.
and look at my vibe. Look at me. I'm not that dude, you know.
And that
Mine
brings to
is great.
mind the fact that, you know,
Get a match. Like if you get a match with Conor McGregor, that's going to be a decent payday. Lunch is on you, brother.
yes.
Totally. Yes. Right.
These are
Right.
great points. Great points. So think about sport karate nowadays, right? And I'm learning a lot of the sport karate stuff. I mean, we're literally throwing bow staffs up in the air. I spin around and then I can't catch it. It falls, right? I joke with my students because they don't, you know, people think when they drop the weapons, I've made a mistake. I go, you know what the sound of sport karate is? I throw the weapon on the ground. That's the sound. So don't feel bad about dropping weapons. So I love the points. I love where you guys just went with this. Take art, sport, and science, right? Not everything falls into the science. Not everything falls into the sport, right? And there may be Venn diagrams where there's some overlapping going on, right? There's the art stuff that looks all, flowery, historic. That's not going to work on the street. No one ever said that was going to work on the street. That's fine to train. Like, I'm going to do my Tai Chi Yang Long form. Do I really think I'm going to pull that off? No, I'm doing it for different reasons. Now, if you take those techniques out and make it work, it's going to look very different. But you'd see moves in there that you see in many different martial arts, and that can be a whole podcast topic in and of itself, right? So when people look at some technique and go, well, that's not going to work, some of it is the personal experience that you guys are already bringing up. Some of it is a BJJ guy doing a knife technique, and the Filipino martial artist is going, hey, that's not going to work. And it might not, right? And then a Filipino martial arts guy disarms and goes into a lock, and the BJJ guy's like, you're never going to pull that off against. So, but they may have a point in the way that environment would work against maybe a different person, right? So there's so many factors involved that, Kurt, your comment about the lack of experience, I think, again, we want to be supportive. We're not really just taking shots at people too. A lot of this is lighthearted. We can make fun of ourselves too. Someone might not be able to pull something off that someone else can because of their own attributes, their skill, what they might be good or bad at, right? That people are just different. So it's so difficult to come in and say that won't work. Always and nevers are probably like always and never gonna be true, right? So yeah. I think that a lot of it is they're not thinking about that art, sport, and science either, right?
They don't think about the fact that a lot of these things that we're learning, it might not work on the street, but it's still developing skills and coordination attributes that we could use in another arena, or develop something that we could possibly use on the street. It doesn't mean that the technique is useless. It could be used in a different manner, different format. Drills, when they talk about, I don't know why you guys do that who butt stuff, that tip tap, whatever, patty cake stuff. It doesn't do you any good. Have you seen it outside of that, though? The applications that it helps you develop, the skills and the coordination, the hand-eye coordination, the reflex. They tend to look at things from a armchair quarterback. We're all guilty of doing that when we watch football games, and like, why are they running this way and this way and this way when they could go here? Well, yeah, it's easy to see that from a bird's eye view, but when you're in the shit, it's a little different. When you're in that situation, you tend to just do what is necessary, what comes to mind. And I think it's the security from our own perception and our own bias that allows us to do that. And some people have the ability to outgrow that and have an open mind, where others are just so biased by their own perception that they can't see past that.
Yeah, I was thinking, Mike Perez, like that, because it's good for us to remember too that this is not just a martial art phenomenon. A lot of this is largely people on the internet in this day and age phenomenon. You know what I mean? Because Mike, you and I could get together here next weekend when you're in town, play guitar, right? And then put a video on YouTube, and every comment is going to be like, this band is never going to work. You know what I mean?
Everything out.
That's not why we're playing. Trust me, you don't want to listen to me sing at this point in my life. You don't want to hear me play guitar, So I agree with you, but we didn't put this video on thinking that American Idol is going to see it and be like, please God, Mike and Kurt, come be on the show because you guys are the new.
You're going to Hollywood.
Right. That's not why we're playing guitar, bro. We're just jamming out, having a good time. We thought we'd share anything somebody else wanted to do. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's the same to assume everything that everybody says is because you're trying to prove a point. Therefore, someone else must prove a point in contrast or in support of is a bit crazy to me. Sometimes people just say things because they want to share.
Right. And I think that goes competition. That's the competition. Like, I think people are overemphasizing the sort of competitive, right? Because to be a good fighter, you kind of have to have the ego. I'm the best, because you want to go into the fight thinking I can win this, right? That's the competition side. when people live too much in that competition kind of mindset, it distorts who we are as a martial artist broadly. And some of it is that they can't get outside of that, the competitor thing, right? Oh, that's not going to work. I can make something else work. I'll beat that. But that's not where we are as instructors, to kind of give a broader, expanse of techniques and culture and everything. We want to give a lot of stuff that it's not always super important whether one thing works or not, right? So I think the competitor is coming out, like they're living too much as a competitor and not just as a human being and a martial artist.
Yeah, they tend to forget that, when you think about the people that we have that come to our classes, it's a very big spectrum of people that show up. Like Kurt was talking about, we don't know the battles that these people are fighting on a daily basis. Some people, a guy that comes to class and had lost 30, 40 pounds in a few months, that's a great accomplishment, but he's not looking at it as, oh, I'm going to turn into this elite killer. I'm going to walk out of the street, and the minute someone comes up to me and tries to accost me, I'm just going to take them out. No, they're just looking at it as a fitness aspect, where you have other people that are coming to you that they want to learn something that they can use maybe later that evening. People tend to forget that, look at the many people that go to the gym. Some people just do it just because they want to be IFBB pro, where others just getting out of the house just to do something. They're fighting depression. It's their way of just doing something, just to get out into the world. A lot of people online tend to forget that everybody's fighting a private battle. We don't know what that is, but at least they're doing something.
And not for nothing, man.
This stuff is just useless. Oh, that you use that on the street, you're going to get killed. Well, maybe they don't care. They're not using it to become this elite killer. They're just using it to do something.
Yep. And I maintain, man, if I've got a couple friends that have lost like a couple 100 pounds a piece, through martial art training, and people, like you said, are using it to battle depression and addiction, all these things that are the real killers. You know what I mean? Those are the real things that kill the vast majority of people.
Yes.
And they're overcoming these hurdles. They are defending themselves against these things. Bro, you're a champion. You know what I mean? Like, maybe you didn't get into, a cage and do all that, but I'm going to tell you right now, just for daily life and for who you are and what we all know your biggest opponent is yourself, right? And like, to be able to do that and to inspire the other people in the room to be able to try to take some initiative in that direction, you're a champion, man. Forget about it.
100%.
And so the idea of somebody else being like, that wouldn't work, it already worked.
It already works.
Yeah,
they already won, man. I don't know what you're talking about.
They already won.
Well, you figure, if they're having this conversation, it's first world. So we're having first world discussions, and they're acting like it's a fucking ISIS war zone.
Yeah.
You're not facing that every day unless you're in an ISIS war zone. So the two things I'll guarantee that everyone fights every day: gravity and aging. That's martial arts does great in everything we do to help deal with those two things, gravity and aging. We are fighting those every day. Whatever you think, whatever you think, those two things are happening, and you are battling them. Yes.
Well, the Earth's flat, so I don't think gravity's real.
No,
Gravity's right. Gravity's a government conspiracy.
It just would be a little bit different. We'd be shaped a little differently, I think.
So, Tim, this is your show. Just for the sake of time, is there any stones that we didn't turn over yet that we should? How can we bring this home in a way that you think is going to feel productive for everybody listening?
Yeah, let's talk just real quick, I think, about credibility. Just real quick on credibility, the idea of not only the credibility of the people that are saying stuff, how do we determine that? But how do we stay credible ourselves? Because I think about, we think a person with a PhD is incredibly smart. Yes, they are, but they're smart in a very pigeonholed area where their PhD is. Just because they're smarter doesn't mean that the range of their intelligence is larger. It's actually more focused. And so it's the same with us as martial artists. Where do we know when to shut up and say, you know what? I don't have a credibility here. And I'll use the example of, you're talking about armchair quarterbacks, right? This last season, the LA Chargers needed a head coach, and they didn't call me. So, my armchair quarterbacking and coaching is not a thing. They called Jim Harbaugh instead. So go figure. They hired a guy with some actual expertise, and they're paying him money, and my phone didn't ring. So
Yeah, very true. There's definitely times where if someone is a doctor, we grant because they're able to achieve that they know everything else in sort of like human knowledge. So if they make a statement about something outside of their area, people grant it. Look at Jordan Peterson. He makes all kinds of statements outside of his area of psychology. Some of them he makes good points, but some of them he's outside of his realm and he isn't really he's not an expert on there. But we say, oh, well, he's an expert in something, therefore he's an expert in everything. And sometimes all of us make that mistake. I mean, we want to give someone the benefit of the doubt and we listen to them and then they take the soapbox out and we're like, well, wait a second, this guy's not really an expert in that, right? So a lot of times what I like to do, especially after we've already had all the conversations, I've made my piece. What I like to do is go into street epistemology in a sense. If you haven't heard about this, look it up. It's great. You just ask questions. So one of the mistakes I think people get into is when we disagree with someone online, instead of just asking questions about their point, somehow it ends up being me and my point versus them and their point. No. The idea is it's whether their point is correct or incorrect. It has nothing to do with me. So don't get, when they shift the goalposts, don't get sort of tricked into okay, well, I disagree with you, so either you're right or I'm right. No. Either you're right or you're wrong. It doesn't have anything to do with me. So you often don't jump completely in, kind of stay back and just ask questions. That's one of the things don't even make it about yourself.
Yeah,
that's
that's
what I would suggest to a lot of people out there. Don't even get about yourself. Just ask whether,
right.
Ask questions to them. So
yeah, and because what a slippery slope when you do, you know what I mean? All of a sudden you're making it about you. It's going to be about you, and now something gets said, and guess what? You're taking it personally. I think all the points of, Tim, I really like what you said. I had not really thought of it that succinctly. Of like, yeah, you can be a professor. That actually means you have a very specific piece of knowledge, you know what I mean? Like, so you know a lot about a very narrow thing. Or doctor's another example. Of course, anybody who's at a very high level or has taken a lot of training and education and effort to be at that level means they know a lot about a little, not a lot about a lot, and in some way there can be wisdom found in being that master of none kind of guy, you know what I mean? At really knowing all those different things and then being cautious who our heroes are in that regard, because I mean, to be honest, I don't mean it to be controversial, and it shouldn't be, it just flat out shouldn't be. But Bruce Lee's another example of that. He extremely talented high-level martial artist, not someone I knew personally, but from what I can see on the outside looking in, extremely talented martial artist, very insightful, very interested person, with a really big temper who liked to fight dudes,
Yep.
That doesn't make him an expert in philosophy, right? So he studied a lot of, but like that doesn't make him an expert in every single category that he was passionate about. I'm passionate about a lot of things. Like I love cooking or I love playing music, I already said. That doesn't mean I'm excellent at those things. I'm a pretty good cook, but that doesn't mean I'm, like that sure as hell doesn't make me a chef. Right. And that sure as hell doesn't mean I could look at a chef and go, probably you should have prepared it this way. That's crazy. That's a crazy thing to think,
It just means that they were smart at where they got their material. They were smart
Yes.
at their sources. That's all.
Right.
You know?
And a lot of times
You
we're
think of-
really good at echoing the lessons that we were taught,
Right.
Perpetuating those particular things. And sometimes, depending on the pedestal on which you've put your teacher, you maybe have not even thought to look like, why did my teacher think that or teach that, or where did that come from? Did Bruce Lee make that quote up himself? And it turns out, no, he's kind of, like retrofitting things he's learned from other people, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that,
Right.
But a lot of us don't do that. And that's all well and good up until the point where you're insistent upon your own authority, or you're using the other side of this coin is then taking a person of authority. We see this so often with somebody like a Dan Inosanto, and putting them down in an effort to lift yourself up, right? Whether it's being controversial for the sake of being controversial, or saying, I'm going to make a point contrary to this separated individual because inherently it's going to make it look like I'm an authority on things that someone else has never even thought of. When all it means is you know, you got a chip on your shoulder, and that's really about it. And that doesn't make you
Right.
wild. It just makes you bitter.
See, and I think this circles back to the whole credibility thing, where we should, to stay credible, we should be doing the research for ourselves. You know, instead of taking what people say at face value. You know, we should always be trying to educate ourselves and always researching. You know, adapting with the times, modernizing ourselves.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's maybe the key. You know, keep ourselves credible, and don't be afraid to not know.
Yes.
And be afraid to say, look, I don't know, and therefore I'm not going to comment here. Or if I do, be like, I'm just going to tell you I don't really know. Maybe this is what I've heard, and I want to be careful about that. You know, in a general form. I mean, you know, with you guys, you know, friends, it's okay, because we understand. When I say I think I heard something, it means I could be talking out my rear end. But when you put that online, now, you know, you've put that out there, and then it, you know, it snowballs and becomes part of the game of Chinese whispers.
I have a really amazing situation with Premier where I teach that's the sport karate weapons, and I'm not good at a lot of it. And this is actually a brilliant lesson in modesty, because I can say, because when I do the kickboxing, actually, I'm seen as the Kali expert among our team, right? People don't have much of a background in the Filipino martial arts at all. Matter of fact, I can look at like maybe one of their double stick counts, like they call something the halo, and I can say, well, wait a second, maybe we have to adjust this or change this. Maybe there was a little bit of a telephone game where over time it got changed, and you guys haven't been able to go back to the source to see, is it a Redondo 3 or is it an Umbrella 3? And maybe you're doing a combination of both, and they don't know what the Umbrella or the Redondo is. This is a brilliant learning moment. On the other side of the coin, I don't get up in front of them with the bow staff with double chucks and go, I'm the double chuck guy. I actually say, here's the video. Let's workshop it together. I don't know things. We can't know everything. It's fine. So I don't try to lie about my own. My credibility is important to me. And when I don't know something, I say it. And it's a great teaching moment for modesty, actually, and humility. It's brilliant.
Yeah, and as a person and as a parent of young kids, watching you do that in a class, that's the guy. You know, that's who I want my kids to learn from, is the guy who's going like, look, man, I don't have all the answers. Who does? Let's just check this out together. Let's get into it. I'm excited to learn with you. As opposed to the person that's going like, you have to present absolute authority in order to be taken seriously. I'm sorry. Maybe in some circles or in some cultures and environments that might be true. Fair enough. But I'll say for me, man, you know, you can see that coming before you even step through the door, where somebody like you who's smiling, who's going like, this is cool, let's figure it out. Hell yeah, let's go. You know,
anybody that comes and tries to promote themselves as an expert at anything, I'm a little skeptical about. You know,
Not only that,
I tend to look at them a little fishy and just, I don't know. You know, Steve Dave told me a story once about, he always likes to reference his lessons in Balloon to Walk from Ted Buitt. And I love this about him when he explained that if there was something that he didn't know, Ted would tell him, I may not have the answer right now, but maybe I will next week. And, you know, it's that learning, you know, it doesn't have all the answers, but if he didn't have the answer at that time, he might have the next time, you know, an answer to the question on a technique or a response to something, you know, and that's how we should always strive to be. You know, anybody that comes to you and tells you that they're the expert on something and I know it all, I've got all the answers. Yeah, nah, I might just, okay, you do your thing.
yeah, what a cool opportunity as a teacher to continue to learn. You know, your student asks you a question you don't know the answer to. Oh, cool. I'm about to learn. I will go discover the answer to this and either give it to you or show you the path so you can discover it. Because damn it, I want to keep learning too. That was awesome. Thanks for asking, man. You know?
Right.
Well, it's like that adage of when one teaches to learn. You know,
Nice.
Yeah. Well, and it's the highest form of learning. It's why, you know, Guru had me make that big sign you guys see. Well, Kurt, you haven't been out at the academy for a while, but Michael, you've seen it. The big Socrates that he had me put up on the mirror.
Yeah.
So that teaching is the highest form of learning.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. But I mean, think about it, you know, for your own credibility, for your own ego, for your own whatever leadership position, what works better for you to put it out there that you think you know everything, you have the answer to everything, and you fall flat on your face, which you will when it gets obvious that you didn't know something, or the approach that Mike Yuskiw you talked about, which is, hey, let's find out together. Don't look to me for this. I don't know, but we'll find the answer together. I think that will lead to more admiration from your students, if that's the kind of thing you're looking for, which generally I don't think that's necessarily what those of us who are into teaching, we're not looking for that. We're looking for success and happiness in those people, which then makes us feel better. Not that they go, oh, you're such a wonderful teacher. We want to see them succeed. But, you're going to get more, I think, of what you're looking for by being honest in that way.
I think it makes you more approachable in that sense, more revered and respected.
Indeed. Well, gentlemen, let's get you East Coast guys. You're all East Coast except me.
Yeah.
It's late. Well, I appreciate you guys joining us for the premiere show. And I tell you what, audience, if you're watching this show and you like it, if you've got some topics you might want to see this panel of talking heads discuss, throw it in the comments. If not, we've got several ideas ourselves that we'll jump on. But, if there's something near and dear you want to hear us four yahoos talk about, just throw it out there. And maybe it's something, if we have any level of credibility to it, maybe we'll talk about it. Or we can even bring on guests. Who knows?
Right. If we don't have the answer now, we'll have it later.
That's right.
To do plugs, Mike Perez, you want to plug your new program?
Oh, just DNA Martial Arts out of Toledo, Ohio. I actually coined it direct non-classical approach.
Ooh,
just so I'm not specifically naming it something. So, because we take a little bit of this and that from everywhere and pull from all these different sources. So yeah, it's just a little bit of everything. JKD, Kali, kickboxing, boxing, Wing Chun, Silat, breakdancing. I don't know, anything, whatever works,
That's awesome.
Nice.
I love it.
Get your breakdancing thing back. That's great.
I'm trying, I pulled my parachute pants out the other day and thankfully they still fit. The windbreaker's a little tight, but just
defense is the single leg. We're going to do that worm. Defense is the single leg takedown. Right. Worm.
What? I got the teenagers out here doing singing the lyrics of the first Run DMC record. So.
Oh wow, that's way back, man.
They love rock box. I'm telling you.
Nice.
All right. Awesome. Well, again, much appreciated. Great seeing you guys, and hoping to see all of you guys in person sooner than later.
Oh yeah, for another wonderful session.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Talking Heads podcast, presented by Martial Arts Lifestyle Magazine. Support this program by hitting the subscription button on our YouTube channel, which is at Malmag 7404. That's at MALMAG 7404. There you'll have access to all of the Malmag shows, including the Talking Heads podcast, the Martial Arts Lifestyle podcast, the Martial Arts Lifestyle Special Edition podcast, the Martial Arts Lifestyle Alumni podcast, and all future shows. Check out martialartslifestylemagazine.com to read articles on the martial arts. You can also check out what events are happening worldwide, see places to train, and even purchase courses on our courses page. You can also shop at the Malmag store, where you can find a variety of Timmy B's brand sticks for FMA and Krabi Bong, as well as t-shirts and other items. Check out Kurt Cornwell of MKG Detroit and the martial arts he teaches at boomboxdet.com. That's BOOMBOXDET.com. You can also catch his YouTube channel at Coach_Kurt. That's at COACH_KURT. For information on Tim Becherer and the martial arts he teaches, check out DDTmartialarts.com. Links to these websites are provided below in the description, as well as where you can find all of the Talking Heads on their social media. Contact us at malmagonline@gmail.com if you'd like to advertise or sponsor the Talking Heads podcast. Talking Heads theme performed by Arthur J. The Talking Heads podcast and Martial Arts Lifestyle Magazine are trademarked and copyrighted by TNT LLC.